Imbukeli kudlaliwe ngathi omakhenika sithi supporter this township economy babhizi bona bafuna ukusithathela imali zethu ezishisiwe ngoba sithi siyanixhasa nje bakithi. Bukeli namhlanje indaba yethu is centered around lonto ukuthi uma mhlawumbe uthatha imoto wena uyisa kumuntu uthi akakulungisele avana ayibuyise sinezinye inkinga ezintsha kongazazi nokuthi wena ziphuma phi kule moto. 0117140669 0117140670. Those are the magic numbers ongasfonela ngazo la e-studio. My guest today, Mr. Gary McCraw, who's a company secretary at RMI Phecelezi, the retail motor industry, and he's also the director of NADA, which is the National Automobile Dealers Association. I didn't mention that, Gary. Alongside Mr. Elias Shamatla, of course, and Mazi Mbukeli ukuthi he is Shoshovi samalungelo abantu. Uma-ke wena mhlawumbe uke wayithola usenkingeni enjalo, please sicela uzusfonele. Very quickly, Elias, before ugera sitshela ukuthi what recourse does uLokhuzana have, what do you think yini angayenza mhlawumbe ubhuti?
Give to udliwe.
Udliwe ne? Unfortunately, yeah. It's sad but true.
Yeah, but what he needs to do is to go back to small claims court.
Okay.
But I think the first reason why small claims court directed him to a lawyer was that they can't raise the guy, the authority share.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So he has to find the whereabouts of this guy so that they can be able to serve him with summons.
Okay.
Yes, and then afterwards they can be able to obtain the default judgment because I don't think he will defend that summons. And then after the default judgment, there will be attachment. But what is it that is there to attach? Because he bought a vacant land. Most probably that land is not registered in his name.
Gary?
So it's going to be an academic exercise.
Wow. Gary, any advice for poor Gift?
I think the advice has been given. He's got to follow. He'll have to identify who that person is so that judgment can be served on the person, at least for coming to court. If the person appears in court, he must probably try and defend the case. But the chances are, given what we've heard, he must probably be found guilty and the judge will rule against the mechanic
yeah.
And must probably refund the money and maybe even add potential loss of earning or whatever is there. So, yeah, he's got to follow the advice that he's been given, unfortunately.
And then, Gary, when it's at this stage, because you were saying that you guys can actually mediate between, the dealership and the consumer, but when it's reached court level, this stage where Gift is at now, are you able to do any intervention there?
Generally, when it goes to legal, then as an organisation, we withdraw ourselves from the process because we cannot get involved in legal matters. And quite often we advise the consumer to try and find an amicable solution and rather go to the ombud before going to court. But sometimes resolutions just can't be reached. It's either one side or both sides have a hard stance on the matter and the only resolution will be court. But that's very few and far between.
And you spoke about the 95% of the cases that you do resolve. Now, are those were obviously before getting to the stage where it became a legal issue?
Yeah, most of those are quite easily. We get both sides. The consumer advises us what their complaint is. We then give the dealer or the workshop an opportunity to respond. We have a look at it. Through the paperwork that we receive, sometimes we can make a decision. Other times we'll get the parties around the table and we'll mediate the process. But invariably, as I said, 95% of the time we find an amicable solution and get the problem resolved.
That's interesting, Gary. Now, Elias, I mean, we spoke about ukuthi a lot of people abawazi ama-parts ey'moto zabo ukuthi imoto izodingana. So kulula ukuthi omakhenika ayiqambela abanga, especially women. You know, abanye abazi nokuthi imoto kumele ithelwe amanzi, ku-check oil, unless laba abanama-motor plan, obviously, umuhambisa imoto bakwenzela yonke into, which is a peace of mind, but obviously iyabiza. So for umuntu ongakwazi lutho-ke ngey'moto ngama-parts, uzokwazi kanjani ukuthi first of all kumele check ukuthi lo muntu ayisa kuyena imoto uregistiwe, wazi kanjani ngokusebenza ngaleyo type yemoto lo muntu afuna ukuthi ayise kuyena, and izinto enjalo, like what are the questions umuntu ekumele ayibuze before I surrender my car to somebody, one who might not be registered, who might not even be qualified to do lo msebenzi engifuna ukuthi awenze?
Mina, my advice is that take your car to the reputable dealer first for diagnosis and for the code. Then after they have quoted you, then you can go to the guy and say, I bought this part, can you please fit it in for me while you're standing here?
Oh, okay.
That way, at least, you are safe. Unlike when he says, you know what, my sister, Allah, is throttle body lentally.
And you don't know what he's talking about.
Yes. You know, and the car only needs a sensor.
Yeah.
And he tells you about the throttle body. Yeah. And he says the throttle body is going to cost you 40,000 rand. You know, but because you 20,000 rand. And you pay that money only to find out the part only costs 500 rand.
Imagine. Speaking of parts, but Elias, I heard from Gary earlier on, Gary, because I wanted to find out if I go into a service and this is not my registered dealership where I normally service my car. Can I ask for those parts, brake pads? Can I demand them? Apparently, according to the Consumer Protection Act, you can actually ask for those parts.
Yeah, you can, actually, that's what you should.
So but the thing is, you can't stand over the mechanic when he's obviously dismantling your car and be like, are you sure you're putting it in the right place? But you have the right to demand even the used parts, and you can actually take them home with you. Okay. Why abantu bengakwazi lokho, but Elias?
Yeah, the thing is that obviously it has been disclosed to them that actually they can request the old parts. However, sometimes it's a matter of looking at them. Okay, here they are. Actually, they have been changed. I've seen them. You can check them away. It's fine.
Okay.
Sorry. But sometimes what happens is that if they talk about engine parts.
Yeah. Things that you don't see.
Yes. Or, for example, they have to overhaul the engine. They have to take the block or whatever to the engineering, which is going to cost money. Yeah. Then you've got a problem there. Because sometimes they take a shortcut after they have overhauled the engine and then start smoking. You know, and when you go back to them, they say, my sister, it drive another 1,000 cases. Afterwards, they don't entertain you anymore.
This is crazy, though, Gary. I mean, how is it that we're not privy to this much information as motorists? I mean, I'm literally getting surprised by most of these things, but I've taken time to actually familiarize myself with these things like parts, and you know that you can actually buy them. There's salvage yards and stuff like that, where you can actually still get properly functioning parts. But we don't like to shop around. We'd rather just take that money to somebody that we don't trust, and he does even a worse job.
You've also got to remember that if you bring in parts, if you bring a part that you've purchased into a workshop and ask them to fit it, sometimes they might be reluctant because they don't know where that part has come from. It could be the incorrect part. And then if they fit that part, there could be further failure or consequential damage to the engine. And then you could potentially hold that workshop liable for the consequential damage. So a lot of them are going to be very nervous, potentially fitting parts that a customer's brought in because they don't know where those parts have come from.
Oh, unfortunately, Gary, we're out of time for this. I actually wanted to expand so much more on this topic, but Elias, as always, thank you so much for ukuthi uzivakashele namhlanje uzosichazela ukuthi abantu ungabasiza kanjani. That number ka Gary menimdinga 011-886-6300. Mbukeli, unfortunately, we've come to the end of the show. Thank you so much for tuning in. So on next week with another live consumer affairs topic from myself, Umajali, with my guest in studio, Gitin Salegash. Bogele, welcome back to Yilungelo Lakho. Lakmama Pambili, SABC Wadi Mzansi for sure. The studio lines are open. Ungasendela i-message ku Twitter, ungasendela i-message ku consume@sabc.co.za. Ngihleli lana neinsizwa. I'm with Mr. Gary McCraw, who is of course the company secretary for the retail motor industry, or EMRI, alongside ubaba Elias Shamatla. Yena ke uyisishoshovi samalungelo abantu. Before we we took an ad break, Gary, Brian, we've just briefed you about, his entire issue. What can he do? Because what we now understand, what we just spoke about is that dealership that he mentioned is actually registered as your member. So he does have recourse. What can he do, though?
Okay, I would recommend that Brian contact our offices. I'll give him our Johannesburg number, 011 886 6300. And then he can phone in and just speak to the lady on the switchboard and say that he's got a consumer complaint which he wishes to lodge. And then the lady on the switchboard can give him our contact details of our Durban office, and then he can lodge a complaint and we will investigate the complaint. All
right, that number again, please, Gary. I'm sure everyone in Durban now is looking for that number.
011
yeah
886 6300.
6300. Thank you so much.
Or they can go on to the website, the www.rmi.org.za, and there's a consumer complaint form on the website that they can lodge through the website. Very
interesting, Gary. And now, but Elias, we're talking about, somewhere in the line of command, in the chain of command, somebody obviously wants to flout the processes and so forth, which is why you arrive at issues like this, which is then why I guess Gary was emphasizing, Uguti, you need to rather go to a reputable dealership. But how often do you get complaints from those reputable dealerships as well, Gary?
Look, we do get quite a lot of complaints, not from just dealerships, right across the retail motor industry. So that's independent dealers, franchise dealers, fitment centres, panel beaters, right across. The RMI most probably handles about 11,000 complaints a year. But we resolve most probably close to 95% of them amicably. Quite often, it's not a major issue, it's more lack of communication between the business and the consumer or a misunderstanding. But sometimes there are issues, and where we find the dealer or the workshop have erred in terms of their repairs or whatever.
Can you punish them?
We will get them to rectify and make sure that they see to the needs of the customer. We have in the past where we've had a member that's had numerous complaints against them and they're not coming to the party to fix. We have disciplinary committees. They come before the disciplinary committees, and we have expelled certain businesses from membership.
So it can get that serious, Gary,
yes,
where you can actually lose your trading license. So you guys have that
We don't
authority.
give a trading license. Yeah. They just lose their membership. But again, the credibility of losing membership of our organisation has an impact on
I'm
their
sure
business.
It does, because then people are going to start looking at you twice like, he's probably not that reputable. But Elias, I just want to quickly go to Rustenburg. Ngithathe uBut Gift. Bud Gift, ngiyabonga nsizwa ukuthi ubambe kulayini siyakwamukela ohlelweni. Umbuzo nabambani?
Yes, how are you?
Good, thanks. How are you, Gift?
Yeah, I'm fine. Yeah, I also had a problem. I took my car to Rustenburg. It is a Mercedes, and then it had a problem with electric. It was having an electric problem. So the guy promised that he's going to diagnose the car and then just give me the quotation thereafter. So the second time when I got there, he just lied to me that he checked the car and then the car needed a new computer box and the harness cable. So I gave him 9,000 rand to buy all this stuff. And apparently, after a couple of days when I came back, the guy was not there. So his partner told me that he took the money and buy a new stand somewhere in Rustenburg, and then the guy was run away. So I managed to get the guy because I had one guy who was helping me, and then the guy told me that he serviced the car. But when I brought the car to him, I said, the car is serviced, I just need to get the problem because it was only starting, but it was not getting on.
Yeah.
So, and then till now, I think I went to small claim court. They tell me that I should look for a lawyer. I look for a lawyer. And they sent him letters of demand, and then he never responded. So I've got those letters with me. They said I should go back to the small claim court. So I don't know how would I be assisted anyway.
And then, Gift, was this without mentioning the dealership or the establishment that you took your car into? Was this a reputable place according to you, or did you do ama checks ukuthi labantu ba registiwe somewhere?
No, I didn't do, because I got recommended by the other friend of mine. He said, no, those guys are good electricians. So he called them with me, and then I towed the car from Okwase to Rustenburg, and immediately after I saw that the guy is not even attending my car, I have to tow it back home, and then the car is just staying there, nothing's happening.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, but Gift, thank you so much. Please listen there on your television. We will address your question shortly after this break. Mbukeli, asiphinde sigijime siye ngasayitolo. We'll be back shortly after this. Ngayindawo. Bogeli, welcome back. Incingo zethu, they are fully operational. 011-714-0669, alternatively 714-0670. Consumer at sabc.co.za. Uyasithola futhi lapha on social media. Sikhuluma ke Mbukeli ngokuthi wena mohambisa imoto yakho kumakhenika hlampa ayibuyise isimoshakele even worse or more than lesi sikhathi uyihambisa. Yiziphi izinto ongazenza ke? What we're getting is that inawo ama regulations lento kodwa lawo ama members kumele ayoziregistela wona, because awukho umthetho ophoqa omakhenika ukuthi mabasayine la ukuze phela bakwazi ukuthi sonke isikhathi bahlale bebhekwa. So uyasho ke uGary kanye nobaba Elias bathi into ezokusiza ukuthi uvane usebenzise abantu abaziwayo abaregistiwe, so that uzokwazi ukuthi uma uyithola usenkingeni they can then intervene, babone ukuthi bakusiza kanjani. So put Elias ulokhuzana uzandisile Cape Town uthenga ama parts in walethile. Okay, let's say, okay, one thing he did right, he did send the parts the first time, but when he got the complaint ukuthi akuwona, then they're not compatible with whatever model akade befunela wona, and then akasakhulumi next, meaning now the injectors were gone and the money was gone.
Yeah, I think imoto akhuluma ngayo, I think I know it, there's got a scarcity of parts. What we can do is mhlambe asithinte after the show, because Tenasila is Joburg.
Yes.
We can go there and find out what's going on. Yeah.
Okay. All right, but Zandisile bayasho ke ubabu Elias, numbers kaBabu Elias zikhona la eLokhuzeni studio. We do have ama Lokhuzana ama details wakhe. So uthi ke uyacela please uzama ukuthi ubafonele so that bezokwazi ukuthi bagijimele baye bona lapho kuleyo ndawo le ubuthenge khona ama parts. Asiye ku Sis Veronica Ola eGauteng. Hi Veronica, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. And how are you, Matali?
Ngiyaphila siswami. Singakusiza kanjani namhlanje?
Ngikhuluma ngelungelo lakho namhlanje. La ukuthi uma ngaba uya kuma insurances, uya kuma companies are registered. Inkinga ukuthi ama prices wabasuka bephezulu, and then when you go to mechanical local khona la ama prices are cheaper, and then you see ukuthi bakufakela izinto ezi right at times, because angeke bafane bonke ngisho.
Yebo.
So manje inkinga isekuthenini ama prices ukudla kuyakhuphuka, ama mechanic bayakhuphuka, yonke into ihlezi phezulu. So manje asazi ukuthi siyobalekelapi.
Siyabonga kakhulu sis Veronica la eGauteng. I mean, I suppose the common lento, we were talking earlier, Gary, I was saying that Veronica is basically saying the cost of living is just way too high, and therefore, you know, where you can squeeze a buck, you try to squeeze wherever possible. But now she's like, what do we do when you don't have a choice to go to that reputable dealer and actually have your car attended to by them, whereas mechanic down the road, yeah, slightly lower prices, but it's a gamble. You don't know what you're getting.
I think the advice that I can give Veronica is that if she's taking it to a franchise motor dealer, most probably a franchise motor dealer might be a little bit more expensive. There are independent workshops which also fall under the RMI. They fall under the Motor Industry Workshop Association, Independent Workshop Association, called MIWA. And these workshops are legitimate workshops. They have standards. They have to meet certain standards that we put out. They have to have the right equipment, the right mechanics, etc. And generally, you can sit with those people and speak to them. They will do the repairs to the motor vehicle. They might not use the parts that come from the OEM, which are known as the genuine part,
the original
part. There are alternate parts out in the marketplace, which are quite often cheaper, and they can fit those parts to the vehicle. The guidelines that I spoke about earlier provide for that. And as long as there's open disclosure in terms of what parts are being fitted and that, if the car is still under warranty, it shouldn't impact the warranty, as long as they've been fitted properly.
Okay. But Elias, I mean, we've seen a high rise in motor vehicles being stolen, only for them to be found, luckily, for those lucky ones that have trackers and stuff like that. The vehicle is found within a matter of minutes or hours, but it is totally stripped down. Is this then not driving the need for people to then just commit these crimes? Because, well, we're taking parts from stolen vehicles and we're reselling them at whatever prices,
Yeah, because obviously, when you go to the dealer, get a quote for a part, they say it's 5,000 rand.
45,000 gearbox uzova uphume lapho ukhala uthwele izandla ekhanda.
Mawuya lokishini bathi no, so khandela yona ngo 2,000 rand.
Yeah.
So your common sense tells you that this one is cheaper, it's 2,000 rand.
Yes.
But you don't understand, Kuti, it comes from somewhere, maybe not a legit place. But we do know that certain parts are overpriced. I'm talking about myself, whereby I was quoted 11,000 rand on the sensor. And I went to the supplier of that sensor. They sold it to me for 2,000 rand.
Wow. So it's also just going around and just
shopping
getting
around,
information and shopping around. Yes. Let's go to Ed Deben, Ed Dubane, Siptate Unsizwa, Brian. Sawubona bhuti Brian, kunjani nsizwa?
Siyaphila sisa khona, kunjani kuthi?
Ngiyaphila bhuti wami. Singakusiza kanjani namhlanje?
I've got a problem. I took my car to VW Alpine in Pinetown.
Ungababiza igama bazosibopha bhuti Brian. Kodwa siya understand ukuthi uyise kwi reputable dealer yebo baba. Ngiyayazi kahle futhi lo khuluma ngayo.
I sent it to the reputable dealer.
Yebo baba.
For major service.
Okay.
To change timing belt and so on, the water pump. But the water pump, they've changed it, but they never changed it.
How? Ubone kanjani wena nsizwa ukuthi abayishintshanga?
I-trade yami ikule line yezimoto.
Oh, okay. So it was easy for you to figure out ukuthi cha khona ukushaya amanzi la.
Yes.
Okay. So
but then once I've discovered that, but you know, they've just cleaned it and refilled the water pump.
Okay.
And then I drove the car and then started having a problem, losing coolant. I went back to them to say, my car is having a problem. It's losing a coolant. And you said you have changed the water pump. You refilled the water pump. And they said, no, it's not the water pump and so on. So they changed the coolant bottle. They replaced that coolant bottle. I asked them, how do you know it's a coolant bottle? That is problematic because the relief valves on the coolant bottle, it's facing the water, the firewall. So you cannot see if it's faulty because if it's releasing the pressure, it's still pointing in the same direction, the firewall.
Yeah.
So they charged me for that. I said, okay, that's fine. I drove the car again. After 400 or 500 kilometers, it started showing that there's a coolant loss as well. I took it to them back again to say, this is a problem. The car stayed with them for about a month without them giving me a call or updating me what's going on in the car. So I had to follow up, write an email, and then they responded with a long letter, did their analysis to say, no, the problem, there's a carbon particles, it might be the cylinder head. Now it's no longer the water.
How? Okay. So kugcine kwenzakaleni ke nsizwa ugcine at least imoto yakho isisebenza even though usukhokhela lezo indodla zemali.
No. The cylinder head has not been changed. So what I did, I said they need to refund me for the water bottle, the incorrect diagnosis They have
Yes,
done.
yes.
Because it's not the water bottle now, because they are pointing on something else. Now they are refusing to refund me.
Okay.
So what do I do now?
Okay, Nsizwa siyabonga kakhulu. Ngicela ulalele lapho Babu Brian lapho kumabona kude wakho sokuphendula emva kwaleli khefu. Mbukeli nawe 0117140669 alternatively 714067. We're talking yonke into ukuthi omakhenika babenzela kanjani abantu phansi. Siyabuya emva kwaleli khefu. Mbukeli, welcome back. Sengivulile manje ingcingo ukuthi nisifonele nisibuze ukuthi mhlambe wena wakwathatha imoto wayisa kumakhenika. Mbukeli, wayibuyisa lo makhenika eseyimoshe wayimosha even worse than kulesi state ukuthi wena ubuyihambisela imoto kumakhenika for yona. So ungashayela ucingo 0117140669 alternatively 714067. Ungasithumela ne-email ku consumer@sabc.co.za. My guest today, Mr. Gary McCraw ovela a retail motor industry alongside Uput Elias Shamatla, who is a consumer activist. So Uput Elias, ibulk yama complaints wena osebenza nabo ivela kuphi? Is it from abantu reputable noma ama individuals? Because I know Gary mentioned it ukuthi inkinga iqala where there's individuals, not necessarily la kuthiwa yabona kunama regulations, but wena ama complaints wakho avela kuphi? Labantu abayisa imoto komakhenika ekasi or kanjani? Wathola lapho wena ama complaints?
From both.
Okay.
Yeah, because for example, as the bank says, the bank is not in the business of stealing money.
Okay.
Your money is stolen by the teller.
Oh yes.
You understand? So even in the big businesses, the technicians can steal your parts. You brought in your car, and their friend brought in their car as well, which is similar to yours. So they will book out the parts using your VIN number.
What?
And then fix that car, not yours. Actually, in my car, there was a car that was serviced every 15,000 kilometers before mine. So wow. Every 15,000 kilometers when I went to service my car, I'm told that I've serviced my car. And I had to prove. Fortunately, mine was black, that one was white.
Oh, wow.
So that's how we managed to differentiate. But it was using my VIN number to service.
But Gary, I mean, let me read a tweet that we actually made part of formatting this show. There's a guy on Twitter who said, my mechanic said to me, go rent the same car you have, then come to me, we'll exchange the gearbox.
Well, if I'd got that tweet, I would have run a mile because immediately the customer should have realized that this mechanic is totally unethical.
Exactly.
If you'd gone and rented a car, you would have been committing fraud. It would have been theft. A customer like that, if they get any comment like that from a mechanic or any business, they should just walk away and not do business with those people. Because all they're doing, if they do, they're perpetuating crime within the country.
But Elias, uthini wena ngalo muntu ukuthi isicishe sifane nawe le story ukuthi kuthiwa hamba uyorenta in. So basically uthi wena if lo bhuti ubevumile ukuthi ahamba ayorenta le moto ubezobe enza ubugebengu njengoba esho uGary. But then who's gonna know, because ubani ozoreporta kubani?
First of all, if let's say for example it has been established to go to gearbox ijonjiwe,
yes,
both of them are going to be arrested because the gearbox is going to be found in his car.
Yeah.
So in other words, he's like an accomplice
to crime ya mechanica wakhe.
Yes. On the other hand, what if a mechanic ufaka gearbox la but ukhipha a computer box from imoto yakhe? Because obviously the mechanic is unethical, as he's saying. So a mechanic can steal the computer box from his car and fit it into somebody's car.
Yo. But now, this is what confuses me. And I'm not going to make this a woman and a male thing, Gary. Please speak to us as like everybody. I mean, we all like to get vehicles, but we don't necessarily ask a lot about these vehicles that we're driving. What are the best parts? Where can we outsource these parts? We basically don't know our cars up until it starts giving you a problem. And then you have to take it to a mechanic. And that mechanic can tell you, well, we service the parts as we saw there. They basically dust off the brakes. I mean, we were talking about the safety. I mean, if somebody is going to not renew my disc pads, that is a safety issue automatically. I should be able to do something. How do you go about establishing what is even wrong with the car, Gary, when you can't even open the bonnet to pour water in your own car?
Okay, when you go into take your car in for a service, whether you take it into a franchise motor dealer or you take it into an independent workshop, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to explain to the person that's receiving your motor vehicle what you believe is wrong with your car. They're going to write it all down. They should put it onto the job card, and then they should give you a quotation. It's required in terms of the Consumer Protection Act. They should give you a full quotation in terms of what they're going to charge you for the parts, for the labour. And should they, during the course of fixing your motor vehicle, find that there's something else that they weren't aware of, they have an obligation in terms of the Consumer Protection Act to phone you or get hold of you and advise you that this is, and get authority from you to continue to do that additional work.
Yeah.
And they're supposed to give you the amount that it will cost. Also, if they're unsure whether there has to be a stripping of a car or stripping of a portion of the motor vehicle, they're supposed to give you an estimate in terms of what it will cost to strip. Then they give you the quote after they found out, and then you need to accept that quote or
decline.
Then they will have to put the car back together, but then you will be responsible for paying the quote and not the full amount.
Okay.
It's very, very difficult, if an engine, they're doing repairs to the inside of an engine, you wouldn't know if they've replaced the pistons or the rings or whatever. The only way that you would be able to do that is if you took it to a third party and a third party did the check, but you wouldn't want them to go and open the engine again, etc., because that's more money. So unfortunately, again, you've got to almost rely on taking it to a reputable company and a reputable workshop. Phone around, ask friends, but make sure you really take it to somebody where you've got recourse through a code of conduct, back through the OMBIT or through our organisation, the Retail Motor Industry Organisation.
And you were saying, Gary, that your members are actually, they volunteer to sign up with you. So there's no obligation upon them. Anybody can set up an overnight shop and actually start trading without necessarily being part of your organisation. But then you cannot help those individuals. And the Consumer Protection Act does not also assist consumers in that context.
Yeah, if the person's an individual and is not a registered business, the CPA doesn't protect them. So again, the consumer needs to understand that and look for where they get protection and maximum protection.
Yeah.
Even within our own organisation, we have a program where we take previously disadvantaged people in townships, we put them through a mentorship to train them, assist them in developing their businesses and operating ethically and hopefully one day migrating from being that informal mechanic who's running his own small business into a formal business.
Yeah.
And those programs are available to assist people in the townships to get into the formal sector.
That's very interesting because he was talking about, how people are turning to supporting the township economy. But then those people in the townships also, kumele nisebenze kahle bafethu ningadli imali zabantu ningashintshi amaphathi nifaka amaphathi amadala because siyadinga usiyafuna ukunisupporta but then izinto mase ingasebenzi mase nisibuyisela imoto zimoshakele even worse angeke sikwazi ukuthi sinisupport. Let me take uSizandisile all the way from Cape Town. Zandisile, thank you for staying on the line. Singakusiza kanjani namhla? Yeah, what? But Zandisile.
Sisi ndathenga inantsika injectors.
Ewe.
Ngefoni.
Okay.
So zandicosta 8,000 rand.
Okay.
For umtshana wami ose-Eastern Cape Mahindra. Bazithumela kuye injectors eziyi-4 ndazithumela nam eziyi-4 ezazonakela. So ufika kwezi injectors by Eastern Cape zafika ingezizo ezi-right for la moto.
Okay.
And then bathi makazithumele back kubo eJoburg bazithumela. Kaba kuphelile imali yemka ngolo hlobo.
Aw. So khange fix imoto egqibeleni Tatu Zandisile.
yathini sisi
ndithi khange nikwazi uba niwafake awamaphathi kwimoto because akazange azabuye nawo
azange aphinda athumele kwanto wavela wabaleka kwayena so asimazi basingamfumana kanjani
benithi ngubani lo enanansika without ukuba uthethe mhlawumbe igama lekhampani okanye intontoni but uzi-introduce ethi uyini usebenzela bani nimfumane njani Butsaniseni
no bivela ikhampani ye-injectors eJoburg.
Oh, okay. So the company was here in Joburg.
Right. Wazithumela i-injectors.
Okay.
But ngoba sesibuyela back eJoburg age yazingalunganga zangaphinda abuyishe zi-right.
Oh, okay. All right, ngiyakuzwa ke bhuti Zandisile eKapa. Mbukeli nawe ungathatha ucingo usishayele 0117140669 alternatively 7140670 consumer@sabc.co.za. Those are the magic contact means. Sebweva kwaleli khefu ngayindawo. Hello sanibonani babukeli sinamukele kwindaba yethu yanamuhla kuhleleni lithanda kakhulu ilungelo lakho it's your right siza kunina bukhoma la kumamba phambili phela iSABC 1 eMzansi for sure uyazi ke lo uMangcolosi uAlisha uMazikhali kaSjongo kaJali mbukeli 0117140669 alternatively 7140670 those are the magic studio numbers uma sengivule ama lines la uzosithola khona ungasibhalela ne-email ku consumer@sabc.co.za sikhona futhi on all social media platforms so ungasithumela sibone ukuthi sizokusiza kanjani wena bukeli indaba yethu ke yanamhlanje yashiya abashayeli bevutha bhe ulaka asingabe samosha isikhathi asifakele ama specs le ndaba Bukeli cabanga nje uthi uyisimoto kumakhenika ukuthi nje ayokhanda into encane bese imoto yakho ibuya seyithwele ezinkulu izinkinga futhi ezizogumba la ephaketheni uthini ke uma umkhandi wemoto yakho wena esekubuyisela yona isineyinkinga ebingenazo ngaphambi kokuthi uyise ake siza ukuthi bathini emgaqweni
Kubakho ithuba lokuba isithuthi sisitsha singekho sitsha sibe nengxaki efuna isandla sikamakheniki nangona abanye bethembekile emsebenzini wabo kukho abo basoloko bejonge ukwenza ubugwenxa obushiya umnini isithuthi ezisola ngokusese isithuthi kulomkhandi zininzi iziganeko apho umnini isithuthi ebuyiselwa isithuthi sakhe sesikhoxozela nangakumbi nangona umniniso engenakuba nabo ubunqina kwamanye amaxa kuzube amalungu eso sithuthi etshintshiwe kwafakwa amadala
ama brake pads I make sure ukuthi mangihambisa imoto I need the ones that are old I need them back because normally they'll just polish them and then lie to you to say we replace the old ones only to find that it's no they're lying so all the things that they say or the oil filter everything I need them back so that I can be sure that it has been replaced properly so
Umkhandi wemoto waseGauteng uthi zixhaphakile iziganeko zokukhohliswa kwabathengi ngabanye abakhandi izithuthi nokubiwa kwamalungu okanye iparts zezithuthi zabo ngomakheniki.
On a weekly basis we have the customers come here from another workshops and they say that the parts been stolen or the parts which were supposed to be replaced never been replaced just clean and put it back inside the vehicles.
Kutshanje umqhubi kwiqonga lonxibelelwano uTwitter utyhole ngokuba ngethuba yokulungisa imoto yakhe umkhandi wemoto uthe angamfundisa iqhinga elinokubenza abafumana inzuzo bobabini eliqhinga ikuqesha isithuthi esifana nqwane sisakhe kwiinkampani eziqeshisa ngemoto aze naso kuye ukuze atshintshe igearbox yakhe endala afake entsha kuloo moto ayiqeshileyo. Ulagidze uthi nangona kuphambili ukonga imali kodwa akufunekanga ibe yilonto kuphela ejongwa ngabaqhubi kwindawo ezilungisa imoto kungenjalo umuntu angazibone yokugaxeleka kubakhandi bemoto abanobukrelemnqa.
If you cannot afford to repair the vehicle, right, don't leave the vehicle there, take it to a back at home. Some of the workshops doesn't even charging for diagnostics, all right. Take it, let them to check the vehicle, get even 2-3 opinions of the vehicle.
Ukanti bakho abanini izithuthi abawuvundleleyo lo mkhuba.
Important to go to accredited places when you're servicing your car, right? For instance, if it's not BMW, then it's the BMW subsidiary or at least a place that is verified, right?
I always go on to Hello Peter and just check first if there are any dodgy complaints about the people. And then you just pretty much have to trust the mechanic. I also belong to, because this is a Land Rover, to groups that are on Facebook and they do recommendations of mechanics.
You always look at the mechanic's reputation. Mhlambe also based on references from some people that have used him or her before.
Imibuthela ulinkampani zemoto ibongoza abaqhubi kuba bahlabe bekhangele ukuze bangabi ngamaxhoba lomkhwa kwaye bafake izimangalo xa bethe bazifumana kweso simo. Nobathembu Zantsi, Yilungelo Lakho.
Asibonge kakhulu ke ngaloyo mbiko manje mbukeli ukhuluma kabanzi phela ngodaba lethu asamkele ivakashi zethu today. Let's extend a very warm welcome to Mr. Gary McCraw omele inhlanganiso i-retail motor industry. Alongside him siyamazi isishoshovu ke samalungelo abathengi ngikhuluma ngaye ubaba Elias Shamatla seniyamazi mbukeli ujwayele ukuthi afike la azosicebisa ngezinto eziningi la kwilungelo lakho. Gentlemen, what a pleasure. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good afternoon.
Thank you so much. Kunjani bhuti Elias? Gary, I mean, we just saw that insert. It seems like consumers are actually conscious of the fact that in order for your car to be in a proper working condition, you really cannot afford to bypass or, just take the shortcut and save a buck. You really just need to take it to the reputable places. But then how do you make a decision where cash is low and your car is not working, and somebody's offering some of the very same services as the mechanics down the streets or the ones in an overrated mall somewhere?
My advice to the consumer is, sometimes we don't have the money or we sort of panic and we say, oh, geez, we need to go to somebody cheaper. But my advice really is have a look what really needs to be done to the motor vehicle. Sometimes there will be critical items that need to be fixed. Focus on those critical items. Take it to a reputable workshop, one that belongs to an organisation such as the RMI. Because if there is any recourse or any problems, you've got to recourse back through the RMI because members of ours subscribe to a code of conduct. And should there be any dispute, we will mediate a solution. If the RMI can't resolve that problem, we will recommend that the consumer take that matter to the Ombud, and then the Ombud can get involved.
Okay.
So it's not always doom and gloom because they don't have the money.
Yeah.
And they can speak to the businesses, and the businesses will accommodate them in certain areas, helping them with costs, maybe giving them a discount.
Yeah, or even to pay in installments. Yeah.
Rather than taking the risk of going to some backyard mechanic who's not regulated, who could potentially cause more damage to the car than what is already needing repair.
But Elias, I mean, uthini wena ngale insights? Abantu bayazi ukuthi akumele bakhatha amakhona kodwa siyababona basaya ahamba yolungisa imoto la esibuya khona isineyinkinga. Baza kwena neyinkinga enjani?
Ngithi government ikhuluma ngendaba ya township economy.
Yes. And obviously, abantu bafloka lapho ukuthi bayosupport the township economy.
Exactly.
Yeah, kodwa akayikhuluma indaba ye-regulation.
Yeah, the thing is that some of the guys, they remember they're independent. And there's nobody that is overlooking.
Regulating them.
Yes. Yeah. Sometimes they do underhanded things. Some of them do good job. But as he has said, because they are not regulated, if something goes wrong, you don't have a recourse. Right? So as you have asked, what kind of cases we received? I had a complaint myself because my car, when I bought it, it had a 5-year maintenance plan. So at about 90,000 odd kilometers, they replaced the headlamps.
Okay.
Because it was blowing the bulbs.
Okay.
It was a reputable dealership, one of the franchises.
Okay.
So they took the car for a month. They gave me a courtesy car or a loan car to use in the meantime. After a month, they said, we received the headlamps from overseas, come and pick up your car. I picked up my car. 2 months later, it blew the bulb again. So I took my car in and I said, guys, I can't afford to bring my car here just for a bulb. Show me how do I replace the bulb on this car. So they allowed me to go to the workshop. When I got there, the technician said to me, I can't adjust the lights because these lamps are old. I said, sir, but these lamps are new. He said, no, they are old. Immediately I called the workshop manager, who came to listen with me what the technician is saying, and I pulled out the invoice that these headlamps have been replaced less than 2 months ago.
Oh, wow.
And obviously they said between the service advisor and the previous technician, they stole the headlamps.
Oh my goodness.
So they apologized, then they replaced the headlamps. So,
Gary, that sounds like this can happen even in those regulated and reputable dealerships as well.
Look, there are problems, within any business and any reputable dealership, workshop, independent workshop. The problem is it comes down to individuals.
Yeah.
And if you've got dishonest employees, you're going to have these type of incidents. But as rightly been said, by using a decent business, you manage to have that recourse, because if there's a problem, you take it to management comes down, sorts out the problem, and then the customer gets put back to where they should be. But if you're sitting with an individual, and only an individual, you have an issue.
But then, Gary, let's talk about regulation. I mean, Elias has just alluded to it a little bit. How well regulated is this industry? Is there a binding government policy that governs all merchants, giving them binding laws to sort of basically register either with you guys or the ombudsman in order for them to ply their trade?
Okay, I'll go back a little bit. When the Consumer Protection Act came out, the motor industry was one of the first industries that sat collectively around the table to come up with a code of conduct for the industry.
Yes.
How you should operate, and that formed the establishment of the Ombud for the motor industry. So there is a regulation in place in terms of good governance and how you should operate, and if there's consumer complaints, a process that should be followed. Also, if you operate in the motor industry and you employ people, you are obligated to register with the Motor Industry Bargaining Council. And there are requirements, minimum requirements of qualifications, etc., people that you should be employing and processes that you should follow. Then if you go one step further, you can register voluntary with the Retail Motor Industry Organisation and its associations, where we provide additional services to those people, setting standards, setting codes of conduct to uplift the service to the industry. So the industry is well regulated. And there's also recently, there was a new legislation that was put in place, guidelines for competition in the aftermarket. And that opened up the market between the franchise dealer network and the independent network. So there is a lot of regulation out there that governs the industry.
Except for a few people and crooks that always will want to break the law. Ay, mbukeli uyabazi-ke laba abahlale bethatha amashansi. Sikhuluma-ke mbukeli ngalolo daba lokuthi uma wena uthatha imoto wayisa kumakhenika isibuya isiyagula, igula worse kunaloku ukuthi wena lento obuyisele kumakhenika khona. Siyabuya emva kwaleli khefu ngizobe sengivula ingcingo sikhuluma. Mnganwa, awungela, mnganwa.